My name is Lena Whitaker. I'm 35 years old, and I woke up in the ICU after 9 days of sedation to find out my parents had not come to see me once. They had gone to my house instead. My daughter, Ivy, was 7 years old, and while I was lying in room 412 with a hospital bracelet cutting into my swollen wrist, my mother told a social worker Ivy needed an adult who could answer the phone. She said it like I had chosen a highway crash on Interstate 71 to inconvenience her. She said it while holding a clipboard with document forms that would have given her temporary control over my daughter, my house, and the accounts I had spent years protecting. There was a broken blue shoelace in the plastic bag with my belongings, and I could not find the key that had been tied to it. I did not know everything yet, but I knew enough to be afraid. Later, a stranger in a gray coat would walk into that hospital room, carrying a sealed folder, ask for my parents by name, and make my mother's face go flat in a way I had never seen before. But before that happened, I had to lie there with a cracked rib, a dry mouth, and a phone full of missed calls, trying to understand who had actually shown up when I could not. The first thing I remember clearly was the sound of the IV pump, not the crash, not the ambulance, not anyone calling my name, just that steady, mechanical click beside my bed and the feeling that my tongue was too big for my mouth. My right eye opened before my left. The ceiling tiles looked stained at the edges, and there was a strip of fluorescent light above me that made everything too white. I tried to lift my hand and felt tape pull against my skin. My throat burned. There was a tube gone but not forgotten, that raw scraping feeling every time I swallowed. A nurse leaned over me and said, "Lena, you're at Riverside. You were in an accident. You're safe." I tried to say Ivy. Nothing came out. The nurse understood anyway. Good nurses often do. She touched my shoulder, not too hard, and said, "Your daughter is safe." Safe with who? That was what I tried to ask. My lips moved around air. "Don't push," she said. "We'll get you some water swabs. Your neighbor Teresa has been calling. Ivy is with her." Teresa. I closed my eyes. Not because I was calm. Because if I kept them open, I was going to cry, and crying hurt my ribs. My parents' names did not come up until later that afternoon, when a hospital social worker named Marisol came in with a blue folder tucked against her chest. She was kind, careful, the way people are when they have to ask hard questions in quiet voices. She said, "My mother and father had been in contact with the hospital." "In contact," I whispered. My voice sounded like paper being torn. Marisol pulled a chair closer. "They're concerned about Ivy's care while you recover." That was the first sentence that felt wrong. Not worried about my surgery. Not asking what I remembered. Not asking if I wanted them called. Concerned about Ivy's care. I turned my head slowly toward the little table near my bed. My phone was plugged in there, charging. The screen was dark. My lips were cracked. And when I asked for it, Marisol hesitated just long enough for me to notice. That detail stayed with me. The nurse, Deanna, put the phone in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have. My thumb shook when I unlocked it. 26 missed calls from Teresa Kim. 4 missed calls from a number I recognized from work. 3 bank alerts. 2 voicemails from my mother. And 1 text from my younger sister, Brooke, that read, "Mom said if you sign today, I can start moving boxes this weekend." I stared at the word boxes until Deanna gently asked if I was in pain. I was, but not where the chart said. Welcome back to the Madeline Files, where the quiet parts of family stories finally get said out loud. If you have ever been treated like the dependable one until the day you needed help, stay with me. This is a story about a hospital room, a missing key, a child who was safer than my mother wanted anyone to know, and the kind of proof that does not need to raise its voice. Leave a comment with where you're listening from, and if this story feels familiar in a place you do not usually talk about, you are not alone here. I was not raised to be helpless. That sounds stronger than it felt. In my family, it meant I was raised to be convenient. My mother, Renee Carver, had migraines when I was little. Real ones, I think. She would lie in her room with the curtains closed and a wet washcloth folded over her forehead. My father, Alan, worked for the county road department and came home smelling like diesel, salt, and black coffee. My little sister Brooke was 4 years younger than me and cried hard at everything. Tags in shirts, the wrong cereal bowl, being asked to put on shoes. So by 8 years old, I knew how to make toast without burning it. By 10, I knew which bill envelopes went on top of the microwave and which ones my mother hid inside the flour canister. By 12, I could tell from the way my father shut the front door whether he and my mother were going to fight that night. Nobody called it responsibility. They called it Lena being mature. "Thank God for Lena," my mother would say, pressing the back of her hand to her forehead while I packed Brooke's lunch. "She doesn't fall apart over every little thing." Brooke would sit at the table with her socks inside out, crying because the seam touched her toes, and my father would look at me like I had been hired for the morning shift. "Help your sister, honey," he'd say. Honey was what he called me when he wanted me to make his life easier. When I got my first job at a grocery store at 16, my mother asked if I could cover the electric bill, just this once. When I got my driver's license, I became Brooke's ride, my mother's errand runner, my father's person to call when he did not want to listen to Renee cry. When I got into community college, Renee told people she was proud, then asked if I really needed to buy books new. That was our rhythm. I was praised for not needing much and corrected when I did. My husband Owen was the first person who noticed it without me explaining. We met at the credit union, where I worked part-time in college. He came in to open a savings account and had a folder with everything organized: ID, proof of address, his employee badge from the electrical company, and a check folded once in his shirt pocket. He was 24, quiet, and nervous in a way that made him careful instead of awkward. "You're very prepared," I said. He smiled and said, "My dad used to say anxiety is just paperwork looking for a place to sit." It was such a strange sentence that I laughed. Not politely, actually laughed. We were married 4 years later. Owen never made grand speeches about my family. He just watched. The first Thanksgiving he came to my parents' house, my mother asked me to get up 6 times before I finished one plate. More gravy, more ice, check the rolls, find Brooke's sweater, help Alan bring in chairs from the garage. Owen got up on the 7th request and said, "I've got it." My mother blinked at him like he had interrupted church. Later, in the car, I apologized. "For what?" he asked. "For them." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to earn a quiet house." I looked out the window so he would not see my face. Owen was not perfect. He forgot laundry in the washer and had a terrible habit of leaving cabinet doors open. He hummed under his breath when he was concentrating. He believed chili could count as breakfast if there were beans in it. But he saw me as a person before he saw what I could do for him, and that changed the weather inside our house. When Ivy was born, he cried so hard the nurse brought him tissues and said, "Dad, you're scaring the baby." He tied her first spare house key to a blue shoelace when she started kindergarten. It was one of his old running laces, faded at the ends, soft from use. Ivy was too young to use the key by herself, but Owen said it made him feel better knowing there was a backup in her backpack. "She has 6 adults on her pickup list," I said. "I like backups," he said. I rolled my eyes, but I let him tie it. The key was for emergencies, tucked deep inside a little zip pocket beneath a pack of tissues and a plastic unicorn. Ivy called it the secret key, even though everyone in our house knew where it was. Owen told her secrets were different from lies. "A secret keeps a birthday present hidden," he said. "A lie keeps someone from making a choice." I should have known then how much that sentence would matter. Owen got sick when Ivy was 4. It started as back pain, then fatigue, then scans, then words doctors say gently because there is no gentle way to say them. He had cancer in places cancer had no business being. For 18 months, our house became pill bottles, insurance portals, appointment binders, and friends bringing food in containers with masking tape labels. My parents came twice in the beginning, mostly to stand in our kitchen and ask how much life insurance Owen had. Renee said it softly, like concern. "You need to think practically, Lena." Owen heard her from the hallway. That night, after Ivy was asleep, he asked me if my parents had access to any of our accounts. "No," I said. Why? He was sitting on the edge of our bed, thin in a way I still cannot think about for too long. Because your mom looks at grief like it's an unlocked door. I wanted to defend her. Habit rose in me before truth could. But I was tired, and Owen was dying, and he had never used my pain to win an argument. So I said, "What do you want to do?" That was how the paperwork started. Not because Owen was controlling. Not because we expected disaster. Because dying made him think about every place Ivy might be left unprotected if people with loud voices got there first. We met with an attorney named Graham Bell, which always made Owen smile because he said nobody believed that was a real lawyer's name. Graham was gray-haired, soft around the middle, and fond of binder clips. He helped us update wills, name guardians, organize insurance, and create a trust for Ivy's support. At the time, the plans felt awful. Every signature felt like admitting Owen would not be here. I cried in the parking lot after the first meeting, and Owen sat beside me with his hand on my knee. "We're not planning to leave her," he said. "We're planning so no one else gets to decide what love means when we can't speak." That was one of the few sentences I allowed myself to keep whole. After Owen died, I did what widows do when they have a child watching. I kept moving. I signed forms. I canceled appointments. I wrote thank you notes for flowers I did not remember receiving. I took Ivy to school. I learned which nights she needed me beside her bed and which nights she needed me to pretend I did not hear her crying into Owen's old sweatshirt. My mother came over 3 days after the funeral and opened my refrigerator. "You're going to have to be careful," she said. "With what?" "Money." She closed the fridge. "You've never been alone before." I was 32. I had managed Owen's medical bills, insurance appeals, our mortgage, his disability paperwork, and my job. But to Renee, I was alone now, and alone meant available. At first it was small. Could I help Brooke with rent? Just this month. Could I put Alan on my emergency contact forms, just in case? Could I give Renee the garage code? She worried about Ivy. Could I share the household passwords? What if I got sick? I said no more often after Owen died. Grief had burned some of my old patience clean off. But every no came with a family meeting I had not agreed to. Renee would call, then Alan would text. Then Brooke would send a crying voice memo about how hard everything was for everybody. Everybody usually meant Brooke. My job made the no easier. I worked in fraud prevention at North Valley Credit Union, not in a glamorous way. I reviewed flagged transactions, suspicious login attempts, elder exploitation reports, identity theft claims. I spent my days looking at patterns people tried to explain away. My nephew just needed help. My daughter borrowed the card. My mother said I could sign. It's family. At work, those words did not end the conversation. They usually started the investigation. My mother hated my job when it applied to her. "You act like your own mother is a scammer," she said once after I refused to give her my online banking password. We were standing in my kitchen. Ivy was coloring at the table, her feet swinging above the floor. Renee had stopped by with a bag of clearance clothes for Ivy and a request for emergency access to my checking account in the same breath. "I act like passwords are private," I said. She laughed once, sharp and short. "Listen to yourself. Passwords are private. I'm your mother." Owen had been gone 7 months by then. His coffee mug was still in the cabinet, top shelf, blue with a chip near the handle. I looked at it instead of her. "My answer is no." She turned to Ivy. "Your mommy worries too much." Ivy did not look up from her crayon. "Mommy works at the bank. She knows robbers." I almost smiled. Renee did not. 3 weeks before the crash, my mother called me at work. I remember because I wrote the date on a sticky note and put it in my drawer. Not a yellow one, pink. Someone had left a stack of them near the break room coffee, and the top one had a shoe print on it. "Lena, I need your email password," she said. I lowered my voice. "Why? In case something happens. Something like what? You know, a car accident, a stroke, anything. You have a child. You can't be selfish about access." The word selfish had always been my mother's crowbar. I turned my chair slightly so my coworker Manny could not hear. "I have emergency plans." "With who?" "That's handled." She was quiet for half a second. "Handled by who, Lena?" I looked at the fraud dashboard on my screen. A case from Grove City. An adult son using his father's debit card at gas stations and calling it errands. I'm not discussing this at work. You always do this, she said. You turn simple family things into policies. Because policies protect people when feelings get loud. She made a sound like I had embarrassed her. Fine. Be difficult. I hung up first, which was new for me. That afternoon, there was a failed password reset attempt on my personal email. The location was near my parents' zip code. I did not confront her. I took a screenshot, changed my recovery settings, and added it to a folder on my laptop labeled Household. Then I sat at my desk with my hands folded and listened to the hum of the office printer. That was the first timestamp I memorized. The morning of the crash was a Thursday in March. Cold, gray, rain starting and stopping like someone could not make up their mind. Ivy had lost a front tooth the night before and kept pressing her tongue into the gap while she ate oatmeal. Stop doing that, I said, though I was smiling. I can whistle through it. No, you can spit oatmeal through it. She giggled and did it again. Her backpack was on the bench by the door, one strap twisted. I untwisted it and checked the small pocket because it had become habit. Tissue pack, plastic unicorn, blue shoelace, key still tied there. Owen's knot had held for nearly 3 years. Ivy caught me looking. You always check. I like backups, I said. That's what daddies. I know. She leaned her head against my arm for 2 seconds. At 7, affection came like weather, sudden, brief, and precious. The voicemail from my mother came while I was driving Ivy to school. I did not answer. I rarely answered Renee before 8 in the morning. Her early calls were never emergencies. They were ambushes with coffee breath. At the red light near the school, I listened on speaker while Ivy hummed in the back seat. Lena, my mother said, already annoyed. Call me back. Brooke is in a situation, and frankly, I'm tired of being treated like some outsider. We need to talk about your house and what happens if you can't manage everything. Ivy stopped humming. I turned the voicemail off. What situation, she asked. Grown-up stuff. Is Aunt Brooke okay? Mostly. That was honest enough. I dropped Ivy at school at 7:42. She wore purple leggings, a gray sweatshirt with a glitter star, and one mitten because the other was apparently too itchy for learning. Teresa Kim was walking her grandson June toward the same doors. Teresa lived 2 houses down from us and had become part of our life in the quiet way some neighbors do. She shoveled our walk after Owen died without asking. She knew Ivy liked rice with butter when she was sad. She had my garage code, not because she demanded it, but because she once fed our cat during a snowstorm and then never mentioned it again. Morning, Lena, she called. Morning. Ivy ran to her. Look, she opened her mouth wide to show the gap. Teresa put a hand to her chest. Oh my goodness, big kid. I watched them for a second. June rolling his eyes, Ivy proud, Teresa's scarf tucked neatly into her coat. Then I drove toward work. The crash happened 17 minutes later. What I know came from the police report, Teresa's memory, and the strange, broken slideshow in my own head. A delivery truck hydroplaned near the exit. A sedan swerved. My car spun. There was a sound like metal furniture being dragged across concrete. My airbag opened. My coffee went everywhere. Someone shouted from very far away. I have one clear memory of rain on the windshield. Then nothing useful. Teresa later told me the school called her first, because she was on Ivy's emergency list and closest. The office had gotten the police notification, and they needed someone to pick Ivy up before the news spread among staff. Teresa signed her out at 9:18. She saved the receipt from the school office because the secretary's printer jammed and printed it twice. That receipt would become one of the small things my mother did not know existed. Teresa left me the first voicemail at 9:32. Lena, it's Teresa. I have Ivy. She's safe. We're going to my house. I'll keep calling the hospital. Don't worry about her. Just come back. Just come back. I did not hear it until 9 days later, but she said it like an instruction I could follow. While I was unconscious, my parents built a story. They told the hospital they were my next of kin, which was technically true in one direction, and false in every way that mattered. They said they needed information. They said Ivy had nowhere else to go. They said my house needed to be managed. They said I had always been overwhelmed since Owen. That phrase showed up in Marisol's notes later, in quotation marks. Overwhelmed since Owen. I had packed lunches, paid the mortgage, kept my job, learned to sleep on one side of the bed, and sat with Ivy through nightmares where she asked if I was going to die too. But my mother found a phrase that made survival sound like incompetence. The second day I was in the ICU, Renee and Alan went to my house. They used the old spare key from the ceramic bowl on my parents' hallway table. I had forgotten they had it. Years earlier, before Owen got sick, before I understood what access meant to someone like Renee, I gave them a spare for emergencies. After Owen died, I changed the garage code and forgot about that physical key. My mistake was not trusting them. My mistake was thinking an old key had become harmless because no one mentioned it. Renee went through my desk first. I know because she put things back wrong. There was a drawer in my home office that stuck unless you lifted it while pulling. Renee did not know that. She forced it. The left side of the drawer splintered, and the little brass handle hung crooked afterward. Inside were tax records, old school forms, insurance letters, and a labeled envelope with copies of Ivy's birth certificate. That envelope disappeared. So did the spare debit card I kept locked in a small metal box, though the card was expired and useless. So did the house key from Ivy's backpack. That last part took longer to understand. Teresa had packed clothes for Ivy from our house while a police officer waited with her. She did not go through drawers. She grabbed pajamas, underwear, socks, Ivy's stuffed rabbit, and the backpack because Ivy refused to leave it. Somewhere between Teresa bringing it to her house and Renee showing up later to check on things. The little blue shoelace was cut. The broken lace ended up in the belongings bag the hospital gave me. Not the key, just the lace. When I first saw it, I thought the crash had done it. My mind wanted the simplest explanation. It was easier to imagine metal and rain than my mother's hand inside my daughter's backpack. On the 9th day, I woke enough to be told my injuries in a list. Concussion, 3 cracked ribs, collapsed lung, repaired, deep bruising, hairline fracture in my left wrist, stitches near my temple. No spinal injury, no brain bleed. Lucky, everyone said. Lucky is a strange word when you cannot sit up without help. Deanna, the charge nurse, was the kind of woman who did not waste movement. She had short silver hair, dark-framed glasses, and shoes that squeaked softly on the floor. She spoke to me like I was awake even before I could answer. "Your daughter drew this," she said, taping a picture to the wall where I could see it. It was me, Ivy, and our cat Pickle, under a giant rainbow. Owen was a star in the corner. Ivy always drew him that way, 5 points with glasses. I stared at the picture until my eyes burned. "Teresa brought it," Deanna said. "She's been here every day, but ICU rules are tight. She leaves things at the desk." "My parents?" I whispered. Deanna's face changed so slightly most people would have missed it. I did not. They have called, not come, not sat, not left a sweater or lip balm or one of those terrible vending machine sandwiches families eat, because they do not want to leave the floor. Called. When Marisol came in later, I was more awake. She explained that my parents had requested a family consultation. "Today," I asked, "if you're medically able." They're concerned about discharge planning, Ivy's temporary care, and financial arrangements while you recover. My phone was in my hand by then. I had read Brooke's text 12 times. Mom said if you sign today, I can start moving boxes this weekend. "What financial arrangements?" I asked. Marisol looked down at her folder. "They said household bills may need to be paid. They brought forms they'd like you to review." I closed my eyes. There are moments when panic wants to run, but the body cannot. Mine had nowhere to go. It just shook inside me. "I want Teresa called," I said. "She's in the waiting area." My eyes opened. "She is?" Marisol nodded. "She's been here most of the morning. Can I see her?" "I'll check with the nurse." Teresa came in wearing her winter coat, though the hospital was warm. Her hair was pulled into a low ponytail, and she carried a canvas tote bag with Ivy's sweatshirt folded on top. She stopped 2 feet from my bed and covered her mouth. "Oh, Lena." That almost broke me. Not my mother's absence, not Brooke's text. Teresa saying my name like I was not a problem to solve, just a person she was relieved to see. Ivy, I whispered. She's okay, scared but okay. She's with June and my sister right now. She made you a card. She wanted to come, but I told her we had to wait until the doctors said yes. Thank you. She waved that away, almost irritated by it. Of course, of course. 2 words my own family had never made simple. I asked, did my parents come to your house? Teresa's mouth tightened. She glanced at Deanna, who had stayed near the door, pretending to adjust the monitor. Yes, Teresa said. Your mother came Monday evening. What did she want, Ivy? The room seemed to narrow. Teresa stepped closer. I didn't let her take her. Lena, you had me listed at school. The police officer confirmed it. The hospital had my name. Ivy did not want to go with her. I breathed carefully because of my ribs. What did Mom say? That grandparents come before neighbors. I almost laughed, but there was no air for it. Then she asked for Ivy's backpack, Teresa said. She said she needed her school things. The blue shoelace flashed in my mind. Did you give it to her? No. I told her Ivy was asleep and I wasn't handing anything over without hearing from you or the hospital. She got very angry. That sounds right. Teresa reached into her tote bag and pulled out a plastic bag. Instant was Ivy's gray sweatshirt, the one with the glitter star. She had blood on her sleeve from when she hugged the school counselor after they told her. I washed it. I didn't know if that was okay. That was when I cried. Quietly, because everything hurt, Teresa put the sweatshirt on the foot of my bed and did not make me talk. Before she left, she said, there's something else. Your mother told the hospital Ivy was with her. I know, she wasn't. I know. Teresa's eyes moved over my face. Do they know you know? I looked at the phone in my hand. Not yet. That afternoon, my father came alone. Alan Carver had always looked older than he was. He was 63 then, with thinning hair and rough hands, the kind of man strangers described as decent because he held doors and said, Mom too. Cashiers. He came into my ICU room carrying nothing. No flowers, no clothes, no book, not even a gas station coffee. He stood by the end of my bed and looked at the bruises on my face. Hey, kiddo, he said. I had not been kiddo to him since I learned to drive. Dad. He cleared his throat. You gave us a scare. I waited. He looked toward the machines. Your mother's been beside herself, has she? He nodded too quickly. You know how she gets. I did. That was the problem. Where is Ivy? I asked. With that neighbor, Teresa. He said her name like it tasted unfamiliar. Your mom thinks family should handle it. Teresa was on the school list. Well, sure, for pickup. Not for all this. All this. My daughter's fear, my punctured lung, 9 days of absence, all this. Did you go to my house? His eyes flicked away. That was enough. Dad. He rubbed his jaw. Your mother wanted to get some things for Ivy. What things? Clothes papers. I don't know. Did she go through my desk? I stayed mostly in the car. That mostly did a lot of work. I turned my face toward the window. It was dark outside already, though it was only evening. Hospital windows become mirrors at night. I could see my father standing there behind me, shoulders rounded, hands in his coat pockets. Mom wants me to sign something, I said. He sighed. It's temporary. What is? Just so bills get paid and Ivy has stability while you recover. Ivy has stability. Honey, you're in the ICU, I noticed. He flinched a little. For a second, I saw something human in him. He looked tired, not villain tired, coward tired. The kind that comes from years of choosing the easy or wrong thing and calling it peace. Maybe we should wait until you're stronger, he said. I turned back to him. There it was, the almost moment. My father, standing at the end of my hospital bed, looking like he might finally step between Renee and me. Like he might say, enough. Like he might remember that I was his daughter before I was anyone's solution. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down. My mother's name lit the screen. He read whatever she had sent and his face closed. Your mom just wants to protect Ivy, he said. I felt something settle inside me, not dramatically, not like a door slamming. More like a cup being placed carefully on a table. I stopped waiting for my father to become brave. What did you sign? I asked. He looked up. What? You said temporary. You went to my house. Mom brought forms. What did you sign? He did not answer right away. That silence told me I was not confused. I was behind. After he left, I asked Deanna for a pen and paper. She gave me a small notepad from the nurse's station, the top page printed with Riverside Medical Center in blue. My left wrist was splinted, so I wrote with my right hand, slowly, dates, times, names, voicemails, Brooke's text, Mom's clamvy with her, Teresa, Ivy with Teresa, Dad, stayed mostly in car, missing key, birth certificate copy, debit card, password reset attempts. My handwriting looked like a child's, uneven, slanted, but it was readable. At work, when we trained new analysts, I always told them the same thing. Do not start with the story people tell you. Start with what can be verified. I had lived too long inside my mother's stories. I knew how warm they could sound from the outside. The next morning, I asked Deanna if anyone named Valerie had called. Her eyebrows lifted. Valerie who? Cho, I can check. I watched her leave and tried not to look at the IV in my arm. Valerie Cho was not a friend. Not exactly. I had met her twice in person and spoken to her maybe 5 times in 3 years. She was a professional fiduciary, which sounds colder than it is. Owen and I had been introduced to her through Graham Bell when we were making plans for Ivy. Valerie had a calm face, a dry sense of humor, and a way of asking questions that made you realize you had skipped 3 important details. After Owen died, I updated the documents. I changed account beneficiaries. I removed my parents from old emergency forms. I added Teresa to Ivy's school pickup list. I made sure Valerie's office had certified copies of the papers I could not bear to think about. I did not tell my mother. At the time, it felt private. Later, it felt like instinct. The folder itself was not in my house. That was the point. Owen had insisted that important documents should not live where panicked relatives could. Clean up. Graham kept one set. Valerie kept another. I had a summary sheet in my desk, but not the full packet. My mother had probably found the summary sheet and not understood why it mattered. Or she had found nothing and assumed nothing existed. Either way, she was moving fast because she thought sedation had erased me. Deanna came back 20 minutes later. There was a Valerie Cho who called the unit yesterday. Your mother told the desk she wasn't family. I stared at her. Deanna's mouth tightened. The note says the caller asked to speak with the social worker. Did she? I'm going to find out. That was all she said, but her voice had changed. Hospital staff hear family lies all the time. They do not always know which ones matter until someone gives them a thread to pull. Renee arrived at noon wearing lipstick. That was how I knew she expected an audience. My mother did not wear lipstick for errands or hospitals. She wore it for church, parent-teacher conferences, bank meetings, and any place she planned to be believed. Her coat was camel-colored, belted tight. She carried a leather purse and a stack of papers in a clear plastic sleeve. She stood beside my bed and sighed. Oh, Lena, not relief, not tenderness, assessment. You look terrible, she said. Good to see you too. Her eyes narrowed, then softened when Deanna glanced over from the doorway. I have been worried sick, Renee said. I did not answer. She leaned in as if we were sharing something private. We need to talk about Ivy. She's with Teresa. For now. She placed the plastic sleeve on my tray, but that's not appropriate long term. I've been awake one day. You've been unavailable for 9. Her voice lowered. Do you know what that was like for us? There it was. My ICU stay had happened to her. I looked at the papers. The top page had temporary care agreement printed across the top. Beneath it, my name, Ivy's name. Renee and Alan Carver listed as temporary caregivers. A second form underneath had authorization language for household expenses. I caught phrases as my eyes moved. Access, accounts, utilities, mortgage, necessary decisions. Necessary is another word that can hide a lot. No, I said. My mother blinked. You haven't read them. I said no. Her mouth tightened. Don't be stubborn. You cannot even walk to the bathroom alone. I can still say no. Renee glanced toward Deanna again, then back to me. Her smile returned, thin and public. Lena, honey, Ivy needed an adult who could answer the phone. The sentence landed so quietly that for a moment I could not breathe. I had been unconscious, Intubated, cut open, stitched, monitored by machines. My daughter had watched police officers come into her school office, and my mother had found a way to turn that into a failure of availability. I did not scream. I did not tell her to get out. I looked at the papers, then at her lipstick, a soft rose color settling into the lines around her mouth. "Who answered?" I asked. "What, for Ivy? Who answered the phone?" She huffed. "That neighbor, obviously." Which is exactly the problem. I pressed my thumb against the edge of the hospital blanket. Teresa was on the emergency list. For pickup, not custody. "Did you tell the hospital Ivy was with you?" My mother's face changed by 1 degree. "I told them family was handling it." "That's not what I asked. Do not cross-examine me from a hospital bed." Deanna looked up. My mother noticed and immediately softened her voice. "I am trying to help you. Everyone can see you're not thinking clearly." I was thinking very clearly. That was why I said nothing else. People like Renee hear silence as surrender. At work, I had learned it could also be a place to let them keep talking. She tapped the papers. "Marisol can meet with us tomorrow. Your father, Brooke, Aunt Vicky. We need everyone on the same page." "Why Brooke?" "Because she can help with the house." "The house?" My mother gave me the patient look she used when she thought I was slow. "You won't be able to manage stairs, cleaning, school transportation, meals. Brooke can stay there temporarily. My house is 1 story. That is not the point. It feels like the point." Her fingers pressed flat against the plastic sleeve. "You are making this harsher than it needs to be." I thought of Brooke's text. "Moving boxes this weekend." Am I? Renee gathered the papers. "We'll talk tomorrow when you've rested." She left them on the tray anyway. After she walked out, Deanna came over and picked up the plastic sleeve. "Do you want these within reach?" she asked. "No." She put them on the counter across the room. Then she said very quietly, "Your mother asked for your purse on day 3. I turned my head. "She told a nurse she needed your insurance card," Deanna said. "But admissions already had it." "Did she get it?" "No, your belongings were secured." I closed my eyes. "Thank you." "Lena," Deanna said, and waited until I looked at her. "Do you want a visitor restriction?" "Not yet," I thought. Out loud, I said, "Not yet." She studied me for a second and nodded once. The meeting was set for the next afternoon in Family Consultation Room B. I slept badly that night. Hospitals do not let you disappear into sleep. Someone checks your blood pressure. Someone adjusts the IV. Someone asks about pain, on a scale from 1 to 10. And you learn that numbers are too small for certain kinds of pain. Rain tapped the window after midnight. My phone lay on the bed beside my hip, plugged into a long cord Deanna had found. I listened to Teresa's voicemails in order. The first one, "I have Ivy. She's safe." The second, "They said you're in surgery. Ivy is eating toast. She wants you to know Pickle knocked over the plant, but it's okay." The third, "Your mom came by. I did not let Ivy go with her. Call me when you can." The fourth was only breathing at first. Then Teresa said, quieter, "Lena, I don't like this. Your mother asked June if he knew where you keep papers. He's 12. I told her to leave. I saved every voicemail. Then I opened the bank alerts. North Valley Credit Union Fraud Prevention Notice. Online password reset requested. Timestamp Monday 6:14 p.m. Second notice. Security question failure. Timestamp Monday 6:16 p.m. Third notice. Account locked after failed verification. Timestamp Monday 6:19 p.m. Monday evening was when Teresa said my mother had come to her house. Monday evening was also when my father told me he stayed mostly in the car. I did not understand yet how clean that timeline would become. The next morning, Marisol came by before the meeting. She had kind eyes, but she was not soft. I liked that. "I want to clarify some things," she said. "Can you tell me who has been caring for Ivy since the accident?" "Teresa Kim. Your neighbor." "Yes. She's on Ivy's school emergency list. So is her sister Mina as backup." "Have your parents had Ivy overnight at any point?" "No." Marisol wrote that down. "Did you authorize your parents to enter your home?" "No." "Do they have financial power of attorney?" "No." "Have you signed anything giving them temporary caregiving authority?" "No." She wrote carefully. "Your mother indicated there was no existing emergency care plan." I looked at the wall where Ivy's rainbow drawing was taped. There is one. Marisol's pen paused. I swallowed, my throat still hurt. I need Valerie Cho contacted, or Graham Bell's office. Valerie first. Who is Valerie Cho? I not answer fully. Not because I distrusted Marisol. Because if I said too much while medicated, while exhausted, while my mother was already framing me as unstable, it might come out wrong. And some truths are stronger when carried by the person whose job it is to carry them. She'll explain, I said. Marisol held my gaze, then nodded. I'll make the call myself. That detail stayed with me too, herself. By 2:00, they moved me by wheelchair to consultation room B. I hated the wheelchair more than I expected. It made me feel displayed. My hair was unwashed, braided loosely by Deanna, because I could not lift both arms. There was bruising down the right side of my face, yellow at the edges, purple near my jaw. My hospital gown gaped at the neck until Deanna tucked a blanket around my shoulders. You okay? She asked. No, good answer. She wheeled me down the hall herself. Family consultation room B had beige walls, 6 padded chairs, a round table, a box of tissues, and a wall clock that was 9 minutes slow. There was a framed print of a lake no one had ever been to. The room smelled like coffee, sanitizer, and old carpet. My family was already there. My mother sat closest to the door, purse on her lap, papers arranged in front of her. My father sat beside her, looking at his hands. Brooke wore leggings, boots, and a cream sweater too nice for a hospital. She had sunglasses pushed into her hair, though it was raining outside. Aunt Vicky sat near the wall, clutching her own purse like a flotation device. Teresa was there too, in a chair slightly apart from them. She stood when I came in. My mother did not. Lena, Brooke said, her voice trembling in a way I had trusted when we were younger. Oh my God. She did not come hug me. She looked at my face, then at the social worker's folder, then at my mother. Marisol sat at the table with a pen. Deanna stayed near the door. Another woman from patient relations was there, but she barely spoke. Renee smiled like she had already won. I'm glad we're all here, she said. I did not answer right away. Marisol began. The purpose of this meeting is to clarify Lena's wishes regarding her daughter's care during recovery, hospital communication permissions, and any concerns about home access or financial matters. My mother made a small sound. That sounds very formal. Marisol looked at her. It needs to be clear. Renee nodded as if she approved of clarity. Then she began performing. She talked about how frightening the last 9 days had been. She said she and Alan had been managing things from a distance, which was an interesting way to describe not visiting. She said Ivy was traumatized, that Teresa had done her best but was not family, that Brooke was willing to sacrifice her own comfort to move into my house and help. Brooke dabbed under one eye with her finger. My father stared at the table. Aunt Vicky looked at me once, then away. Renee's voice softened. Lana has always been independent to a fault. Since Owen died, she's had a hard time accepting help. We all know that. No one said anything. She is a good mother, Renee continued, and I knew there was a but coming, because my mother rarely handed out praise without attaching a hook. But right now, Ivy needs stability. Bills need to be paid. The house needs an adult presence. Medical decisions need calm minds. I looked at Marisol's pen. It moved every time my mother said needs. Renee slid the papers forward. We're only asking for temporary authority until Lena is back on her feet. I spoke for the first time. What authority? My voice was rough but understandable. Renee turned to me with her public patience. To care for Ivy and manage household necessities. Define necessities: mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, school needs. Why would you need my account access for groceries if Ivy is with Teresa? Renee's smile thinned. This is exactly why we need help. You're focusing on the wrong thing. Teresa's hands were folded in her lap. She did not interrupt. She just watched my mother with a stillness I trusted. Brooke leaned forward. Lena, nobody is trying to take anything. I looked at her. Then why are you moving boxes? Her face lost color. Renee turned sharply. What? I held up my phone. My hand shook, so I put it back down. Brooke's voice went high. I meant if I needed to stay there, to help. Mom said. My mother cut her off. This is not productive. It's specific, I said. Alan finally looked at me. His eyes were wet. I hated that part of me, still wanted it to mean something. Renee placed her palm flat on the papers. No one is attacking you, honey. We're trying to clean up what you couldn't handle. The room went quiet enough for the hallway sounds to come through. A cart rolling past, a monitor beeping somewhere, someone laughing too loudly near the nurse's station, then stopping. I felt heat move up my neck. Not anger exactly. Shame first. Old shame. The kind my mother knew how to call by name without saying it. Couldn't handle. I saw myself at 10 years old, cleaning cereal off the floor while Brooke cried and my mother lay in the dark. I saw myself at 16, handing over grocery money. I saw myself after Owen died, standing in the kitchen while Renee asked about insurance. Even unconscious, I was expected to provide. I breathed in carefully. My ribs objected. What couldn't I handle? I asked. My mother blinked. I repeated it. What couldn't I handle? She gave a small laugh. Lena. Look at Yam. You were unreachable. I was intubated. Brooke whispered, "Oh my God, don't be dramatic." Teresa turned her head and looked at Brooke. Just looked. Brooke sat back. Renee leaned toward Marisol. This is what I mean. She's defensive. She's not thinking about Ivy. Marisol said, "I'm listening." My mother did not like that answer. She continued anyway. That was her mistake. She said there had been no plan, no one appropriate, no family access, no way to know what I wanted. She said Teresa refused to cooperate. She said Ivy had been passed around. She said she and Alan stepped in because they were the only adults willing to make hard decisions. Then she said the sentence that opened the door. There was no one, Renee said. There was no plan. We stepped in. The door opened right after my mother said no one was coming. A woman stood there in a gray wool coat, holding a sealed brown folder against her side. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with a neat black bob streaked silver at the front. She wore no visible jewelry except a watch with a dark leather band. Her expression was calm in a way that made the room seem louder. Marisol stood. "Miss Cho?" "Yes," the woman's eyes moved to me. "Mrs. Whitaker." "Mrs. Whitaker." Not Lena Carver, Renee's daughter, Owen's wife, Ivy's mother. Myself, I swallowed. "Valerie." My mother looked from Valerie to me. "Who is this?" Valerie stepped into the room. "Valerie Cho. I'm here regarding Ivy Whitaker's emergency care plan and the Whitaker safekeeping packet." Renee laughed once. "I'm sorry, the what?" Valerie did not look at her yet. She looked at Marisol. "Before anyone signs anything, I need Mrs. Carver to repeat who she said had custody of Ivy from Monday morning to Wednesday night." My mother stiffened. "Excuse me." Marisol sat slowly. Her pen was ready. Valerie placed the sealed folder on the table, but did not open it. I had imagined that folder so many times after Owen died. I hated it. I was grateful for it. Looking at it there, under fluorescent lights, I felt like Owen had reached through time and set one hand on the table. Renee recovered first. She was good at that. "I don't know what kind of game this is," she said. "But Ivy is my granddaughter." Valerie nodded once. That was not my question. Brooke looked at my mother. Alan looked at the folder. Aunt Vicky whispered, "Rennie." My mother ignored her. "We have been trying to protect a child while my daughter is incapacitated." Valerie said, "Was Ivy in your care?" "She should have been." "Was she?" Renee's mouth pressed closed. Marisol looked at her notes. "Mrs. Carver, on Tuesday morning, you told me Ivy had been with you since the accident." Teresa spoke quietly. "That is not true." Everyone turned. Teresa did not raise her voice. "I picked Ivy up from school Thursday at 9:18. She slept at my house Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. My sister stayed with her when I came here. Renee came to my house Monday evening and asked to take her. Ivy did not want to go. I said no. My mother's face flushed. "You had no right." Teresa said, "I had the school authorization." Valerie opened the folder. No one breathed for a second. She removed 3 clipped sets of papers and placed them on the table with a precision that felt almost ceremonial. The first document, Valerie said, is the emergency school authorization signed by Lena Whitaker on August 17th of last year. It names Teresa Kim as authorized emergency pickup and temporary caregiver for up to 14 days in the event of medical incapacity, pending contact with the designated fiduciary office. Renee stared at the page. The second, Valerie continued, is a certified copy of the standby guardianship nomination and trust protector authorization. It does not place Ivy with Renee or Alan Carver. My father shifted in his chair. The third is a summary of fraud alerts from North Valley Credit Union and associated institutions. These were triggered while Mrs. Whitaker was sedated. My mother's head snapped up. That is private financial information. Valerie looked at her for the first time. Correct. The room went still. Valerie slid one page toward Marisol. There were attempted password resets and failed verification attempts beginning Monday at 6:14 p.m. The source data is being preserved. Mrs. Whitaker had already designated those attempts as unauthorized if initiated by anyone other than herself or the named fiduciary. Renee said, "I was trying to pay bills." I looked at her. There it was, the pivot from denial to justification. "You told me you didn't access anything," I said. "I couldn't access anything because you locked your own mother out." "My own mother out of my bank account," I said. Brooke whispered, "Mom." Renee turned on her. "Be quiet." That was when Aunt Vicky closed her eyes. Valerie placed another page down. "Mrs. Carver, did you enter Lena Whitaker's home while she was in the ICU?" Renee lifted her chin. "We had a key. That was not the question." Alan rubbed both hands over his face. Valerie looked at him. "Mr. Carver?" My father's voice was low. "We went." Renee snapped. "Alan." He did not look at her. "We went Monday." "Did you remove documents?" Valerie asked. My mother said, "We got Ivy's birth certificate because someone had to be responsible." Valerie glanced at Marisol. Marisol wrote. I watched the ink move across the paper. My mother noticed too late. "This is ridiculous," Renee said. "You are all making me sound like some criminal when my daughter was lying there, unable to answer a phone." I heard the cruel sentence return, dressed slightly differently. I looked at her papers, then at the fraud alerts, then at my mother. "Mom," I said. She turned to me, impatient, relieved maybe to be back on familiar ground. I asked, "Why did you need my routing number to keep Ivy safe?" Nobody moved. It was not a dramatic question. I did not say it loudly, but it landed because there was nowhere for it to go. Renee opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "That's not fair," she said. Deanna, still near the door, looked down. Marisol's pen stopped. Valerie waited. My mother looked at Alan like he might rescue her, but he had spent his courage staying quiet for 35 years. There was nothing useful left in him now. Brooke began to cry. I didn't know it was like that. I turned to her. "You asked when you could move boxes. To help. Into my house. I don't have anywhere stable right now," she said, and for a moment her real fear showed through the performance. Brooke had always been protected from consequences so thoroughly that ordinary adulthood felt like abandonment. Renee jumped in. "Your sister was willing to help you. My sister was waiting for me to sign forms while I was on pain medication." "I was not taking advantage of you," Brooke said. I looked at her cream sweater, her wet eyes, her phone face down on the table. "Then why didn't you text me? Are you okay?" she cried harder. Aunt Vicky made a small sound, almost a sob. She looked at my mother. "Renee, you did say Brooke could use the house before Lena knew what happened." My mother went white around the mouth. "Vicky," she said. Aunt Vicky looked at me, then down at her purse. "I heard you in the parking garage." It was not heroic. It was late and small. But it was true. Sometimes truth arrives without music. Marisol gathered the unsigned forms and pulled them toward her side of the table. "These will not be used." Renee stood halfway. "You don't have the authority to decide that." "No," Marisol said. "Lena does." Everyone looked at me. My body was weak. My wrist throbbed. My ribs hurt every time I breathed. I had not washed my own hair. I had a hospital blanket around my shoulders because I could not stay warm. But my mind was clear. "I do not consent," I said. "I do not authorize my parents to access my accounts, my house, my medical information, or Ivy's care. I want them removed from visitor access after this meeting." My mother stared at me like I had slapped her. Valerie said, "Noted." Marisol said, I'll update the chart. Deanna opened the door. That was the moment my mother understood the room had turned without anyone raising their voice. She changed then, not to someone honest, into someone soft. "Lena," she said, and her voice trembled. "Honey, we were scared." I looked at her lipstick. Perfect, except for one smudge at the corner. "We thought we were losing you," she said. "You didn't come." Her eyes filled. "I couldn't see you like that, but you could go through my desk." She flinched. "That is cruel." "No," I said. "It's in the notes." Alan made a sound like my name. "Lena, please. Your mother went too far, but we were trying to keep the family together." I looked at him for a long second. "You drove her." His face folded. "I stayed in the car," he whispered. "You keep saying that like the car was in another state." He had no answer. Renee reached for the papers, but Valerie put one hand over the folder. Not grabbing, not dramatic, just stopping her. "These copies remain with the hospital record in my office," Valerie said. "Mrs. Whitaker will receive her own set when she is discharged." "My daughter is being manipulated," Renee said. Marisol looked at me. "Lena, do you feel confused about your decision?" "No." "Do you feel pressured by Miss Cho, Miss Kim, or hospital staff?" "No." "Do you understand that removing your parents from visitor access means they will not receive updates unless you allow it?" "Yes." Renee sat down hard. For the first time, I saw her not as powerful, but as someone who had relied for years on everyone else stepping back. She had mistaken our retreat for her size. Brooke wiped her face. "So what am I supposed to do?" There it was again, the family emergency returning to its favorite shape. I almost answered. Habit moved in me. Find Brooke a place, call someone, offer the couch, soften the landing. Then I looked at Teresa. She was watching me, not with expectation, but with faith that I could survive disappointing them. "I don't know," I said to Brooke. She looked stunned. Renee whispered, "That's your sister. I know, she has no place. I'm in the ICU." The sentence hung there. Even Brooke looked away. The meeting ended badly for them and quietly for me. Deanna wheeled me back to my room. The hallway seemed longer on the way back. I could hear my mother behind us, arguing with Marisol in a low, furious voice. Valerie walked beside my chair, folder tucked under one arm. Teresa carried my phone and the blanket that kept slipping from my shoulder. At my room, Valerie asked if she could come in. I nodded. Teresa touched my good hand. "I'll check on Ivy and come back. Tell her I'm awake." I already did. I looked up. Teresa smiled a little. She said, "Finally." That sounded like my daughter. When Valerie and I were alone, except for the nurse moving in and out, she placed the sealed folder on the tray. "Owen was very specific," she said. I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry," she added. People had said that to me after Owen died until the words became wallpaper. But from Valerie, in that room, it felt like she meant the whole thing. The cancer, the paperwork, the fact that he had been right to worry. "How did you know?" I asked. "Your fraud alerts copied my office on incapacity protocol. Mr. Bell's office received notice from the hospital when your mother requested decision, making documentation. Teresa also called the emergency number on the school form." Of course she did. Teresa had answered the phone. "What happens now?" I asked. "Practically." I nodded. "Your parents are removed from medical information and visitation unless you reinstate them. The attempted account access will remain locked and under review. Ivy stays with Teresa temporarily under your authorization, unless you request. Otherwise, my office will coordinate with the school, hospital, and your attorney. No one moves into your house. I've already arranged for a locksmith with Teresa's help, pending your consent." My eyes opened. "Already?" She asked if that would be useful. I almost cried again. Valerie slid a form toward me. "This consent is only for rekeying the exterior doors and securing the garage code. Nothing financial, no transfer of authority." I read it twice, slowly. My head hurt, but the words made sense. Valerie waited without rushing me. That alone made me trust her more than half my relatives. I signed. My signature looked terrible. It was still mine. Over the next 48 hours, consequences happened without speeches. My parents were removed from my visitor list. Renee tried to come back that evening with a pastor from her church, and Deanna stopped them at the unit doors. I did not see it. but I heard about it from a nurse who said, "Your mother is very persistent," in the same tone people use for raccoons near garbage cans. The credit union froze every affected login and flagged my profile for in-person verification only. Manny from work called me from a recorded line and said, "I'm sorry, Lena," before going through the formal script. I appreciated the script. It gave us both somewhere to stand. "Do you recognize or authorize the password reset attempts made Monday evening?" he asked. "No." "Do you recognize or authorize any request by Renee Carver, Alan Carver, or Brooke Carver to access your personal accounts?" "No." "Do you want North Valley Credit Union to continue preserving the activity logs for possible reporting?" "Yes." He paused. Then, softer, "I'm glad you're alive." I stared at the wall. "Me too." The locksmith changed the locks on my house before I could walk more than 6 steps with assistance. Teresa sent me a photo of the new key on her palm. No message, just the key. I saved it. Brooke sent me 17 texts in one afternoon. I didn't understand. Mom made it sound different. I was going to help with Ivy. "You know my lease situation. You're punishing me for being poor. Can you please just answer?" I did not answer right away. Then I wrote, "I am recovering. Do not go to my house. Do not contact Ivy. If you need housing, call Mom and Dad." She replied, "Wow, that was all." For once, wow was not a bill I had to pay. My father left one voicemail. "Lena, it's Dad. I know you're ups. Your mom is beside herself." I should have asked more questions. I thought we were doing what was best. "Call me when you can. We don't need to let outsiders turn this into something ugly." Outsiders. Teresa, who washed blood out of Ivy's sleeve. Valerie, who carried the folder Owen and I had made when grief was still ahead of us. Marisol, who wrote down what people said. Deanna, who braided my hair and blocked my mother from my door. The outsiders had done what family claimed as a title and treated as a right. I deleted the voicemail after saving a copy to the file. Aunt Vicky mailed me a card. Inside, in shaky handwriting, she wrote, "I should have spoken sooner. I am sorry." I believed she was sorry. I also knew sorry did not make her safe. That distinction took me 35 years to learn. I stayed in the hospital another week, then moved to a short-term rehab unit for 6 days. Ivy visited once I was out of ICU. Teresa brought her in, wearing a clean sweatshirt and carrying a picture book she was too old for, but still loved, when she was scared. Ivy stopped at the doorway. I had prepared myself for crying, for questions, for fear. Instead, she frowned and said, "You look like a banana." I touched the yellow bruising near my cheek. A very expensive banana. She came to the bed carefully. Teresa had clearly coached her about tubes and injuries. Ivy's face tried to be brave and failed around the mouth. "Did Grandma try to take me?" she asked. I looked at Teresa. Teresa's eyes softened, but she did not rescue me from the question. "She wanted you to stay with her," I said. "But you were already safe with Teresa." I told her no, I heard. She said I was confused. I took a careful breath. "Were you?" Ivy shook her head. "I wanted you. There are pains hospitals cannot chart. I wanted you too," I said. She climbed onto the edge of the bed with help and leaned against my good side. She smelled like Teresa's laundry soap and crayons. For 10 minutes, neither of us said much. She showed me where her tooth had fallen out. I showed her the bracelet with my name. "Why does it say Whitaker?" she asked. "That's our name. Grandma Sue says you used to be Carver." I did. "Do I have to be Carver?" "No," she nodded, satisfied by the simplicity. Before she left, she pulled something from her pocket. "A broken blue lace?" "Teresa found it in my backpack," she said. The key was gone. I looked at Teresa. Teresa's jaw tightened. I didn't want to bring it up in front of her before. I held the lace in my palm. Faded blue, cut clean near the knot, not torn, cut. Ivy watched my face. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby, Daddy teed that." "I know," she looked down. "Can we get a new one?" "Yes." That was all I could say. After they left, I held the shoelace until Deanna came to check my vitals. She saw it in my hand and did not ask. The final confrontation with my mother happened 3 days before discharge. Not a big scene, not a courtroom, not a family dinner. Just another beige hospital space. This time a small office near the rehab unit, because Renee had requested, through Marisol, one healing conversation. I almost refused. Valerie said, "You can." Teresa said, "You don't owe her." Deanna, who was no longer my nurse but stopped by anyway, said, "People like your mother use conversations like crowbars." I knew that. Still, I agreed to 10 minutes because part of me wanted to see what Renee would do when she could no longer get anything from me. Valerie came with me. So did Marisol. My mother objected immediately. I asked to speak to my daughter privately. I sat into a chair with a cushion behind my ribs. No. Renee looked smaller than she had in consultation room B. No lipstick this time. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore a navy cardigan I recognized from Christmas photos. She had chosen softness as wardrobe. Alan was with her, standing near the wall. Brooke was not invited. My mother folded her hands on the table. "Lena, I have been sick over this. I waited. I made mistakes," she said. "I can admit that." My father looked relieved, as if the hard part was over. "I was scared," Renee continued. "You were unconscious. Ivy was with a woman we barely know. Your house was empty. Your sister was struggling. Everything was happening at once. There it was, the blender. Put enough facts in, turn it on high, and hope no one notices what gets pureed. You tried to access my accounts," I said, "to pay bills. You tried to get custody paperwork, to protect Ivy. You took documents from my desk, to help. You took her key." Renee's face tightened. "I don't know what you mean." I placed the cut blue shoelace on the table. My father looked at it, then at her. For half a second, I saw his surprise. Real surprise. He had not known that part. It did not absolve him. It just made the room sadder. My mother glanced at the lace and looked away. "This is absurd. It was in Ivy's backpack. Children lose things. It was cut." She leaned back. "So now I'm accused of stealing a child's key?" "No," I said. "You're accused of cutting a shoelace and taking access to a house that wasn't yours." Alan whispered, "Renee." She turned on him. "Don't start." He stopped, even then, even after all of it. My mother looked back at me and let tears gather. She had always been able to cry without her nose running. I used to envy that as a teenager. "You are my daughter," she said. "I held you when you were born. I believe that too. I fed you. I raised you. I helped make you strong." I looked at her hands. Same hands that had probably opened Ivy's backpack. Same hands that had searched my drawer. Same hands that had slid forms toward me while pain medication blurred the edges of the room. "You made me useful," I said. Her tears stopped. That landed harder than I expected. My father said, "Lena, we can fix this. We can slow down. Your mom can apologize. We just need to not tear the family apart." "I'm not tearing it apart." "Then what are you doing?" "Locking the doors." Renee inhaled sharply. I turned to her. "You said Ivy needed an adult who could answer the phone." My mother's mouth trembled. I was upset. "She had adults," I said. "They just weren't you." No one spoke. It was not cruel. I did not want it to be. It was simply the cleanest truth in the room. Renee stood up. Her chair scraped the floor. "You'll regret this." There she was. Not the wounded mother, not the frightened grandmother. Just Renee, angry that the crowbar had snapped. Valerie gathered her papers. Marisol opened the door. My father stayed for 1 second longer. He looked at me like he wanted me to give him a smaller version of the consequence. Something he could carry without changing. I did not. He followed my mother out. The day I came home, the porch light was on, even though it was 3 in the afternoon. Teresa had replaced the bulb. She had also put soup in the refrigerator, milk with the blue cap Ivy liked, and a stack of paper plates on the counter, because she knew I would not be able to stand at the sink long. There was a note taped to the microwave. "Eat before arguing with anyone, including yourself." I laughed so suddenly my ribs hurt. Ivy ran through the house showing me what had changed. New lock, new garage code. Pickle's food moved lower so I would not have to bend as far. My bed made with clean sheets. A little stool by the bathroom sink so Ivy could reach without calling me. In my office, the broken drawer had been repaired. Not perfectly. You could still see where the wood had split if you knew where to look. I was glad. I did not want every mark erased. On the kitchen table was a small envelope from Valerie. Inside were copies of the updated emergency plan and 2 new keys. One was plain silver. The other had a blue cord attached. Not a shoelace this time, but a soft-braided keychain Teresa had found at a hardware store. Ivy picked it up carefully. "Is this mine?" "When you're older," I said. "For now, it stays in the kitchen drawer. Not the bowl, not the bowl." She nodded solemnly. The bowl by the door was gone. I had thrown it away before the crash in my mind 100 times. Teresa had done it in real life after asking me by text. That evening, Teresa came over with June and her sister Mina. They did not make it a celebration. That would have been too much. They brought rice, roasted chicken, and a bag of groceries. June carried the heavy things without being asked. Mina labeled containers in neat handwriting. Teresa checked the back door twice. I gave her the plain silver key. She looked at it in her palm. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I don't need. I know. That was why she got it." Her eyes shone, but she only nodded and put it on her key ring between her own house key and the little bottle opener she used for stubborn jars. Ivy watched from the table, swinging her feet. "Teresa is family now?" she asked. Teresa froze. I said, "Teresa is Teresa." Ivy thought about that, then smiled. "That's better." Over the next months, my parents tried different doors. Renee sent letters first, long ones. She wrote about forgiveness, fear, motherhood, appearances, and how outsiders had influenced me. She never wrote the words I lied. She never wrote, "I am sorry I tried to take control while you were unconscious." She never wrote Ivy's name without attaching her own pain to it. I read the first letter. Valerie read the second. The rest went unopened into a file. Alan texted on Father's Day, "Thinking of you and Ivy." I did not respond. Brooke posted something online about people who forget family when they get a little money. Then someone from my parents' church, who had apparently heard enough of the hospital story to be dangerous, commented, praying for honesty for everyone involved. Brooke deleted the post. That was a small consequence, but I admit I enjoyed it. The larger consequences were quieter. I stopped paying Brooke's phone bill, which I had been doing for 2 years because Renee called it temporary. I removed Alan as the backup contact on an old insurance policy. I closed the last joint adjacent account my mother had ever known about. I changed every password, every recovery question, every emergency contact. At work, I returned part-time after 3 months. My first week back, Manny had taped a note to my monitor that said, "No suspicious activity except the break room yogurt thief." I kept it there for a while. My body healed unevenly. Some mornings, my ribs ached when it rained. My wrist clicked when I lifted a heavy pan. I forgot words when I was tired. Trauma did not make me graceful. It made me impatient with noise. But the house became quiet in a new way. No surprise visits from Renee. No Brooke on the couch crying about rent while eating Ivy's snacks. No Alan standing in the driveway, asking me to just call your mother. The phone still rang sometimes. I let it. Ivy adjusted faster than I did in some ways and slower in others. She asked hard questions while doing ordinary things. "Did Grandma love me?" she asked once while brushing Pickle. "Yes," I said carefully. "But love doesn't make every choice safe." She brushed the cat's tail. Pickle tolerated it with the weary patience of a saint. "Can I miss her?" "Yes." "Can I still not see her?" "Yes." She nodded. "Okay." Children understand boundaries better than adults when adults do not make them carry guilt as luggage. One Saturday in May, Ivy and I went to the hardware store. She wanted to pick out a plant for the porch because Teresa had marigolds and apparently our porch looked too plain for spring. I walked slowly, still building stamina, while Ivy inspected flowers with the seriousness of a judge. Near the key counter, she stopped. There were blank keys hanging in rows. Polka dots, sports teams, cartoon cats, Mazirkin flags, plain brass, blue ones with clouds. She looked at me. "Can we make one for when I'm older?" I almost said not today. The old fear roasted. Keys meant access. Access meant danger. Danger meant my mother's hand where it did not belong. Then Ivy picked up a blue blank with tiny white stars. "It can be for later," she said, so we made it. The machine whirred, metal shavings fell. The clerk handed the key to Ivy, and she held it like something sacred. At home, we tied it to the blue braided cord and put it in the kitchen drawer beside the flashlight and extra batteries. Not hidden, not available to everyone, just safe. On the first anniversary of the crash, I took Ivy out of school early, not for sadness exactly. I did not want the day to belong only to metal and rain. We drove past the exit on Interstate 71. My hands shook, but I kept them on the wheel. Ivy was quiet in the back seat. Is this where? She asked. Near here. Are you scared? Yes. Are we doing it anyway? Yes. She looked out the window. Okay. Afterward, we went to Teresa's house for dinner. June made garlic bread with too much butter. Mina brought a cake from a bakery and pretended she had made it, until Ivy pointed at the sticker on the box. Teresa set an extra plate by habit, then looked at me, embarrassed. For Owen? She asked. I nodded. We ate with his star drawing from Ivy's hospital picture propped near the window. It was not sad in the way I expected. It was sad and warm at the same time, which I have learned is where most honest things live. Before we went home, Teresa handed me a small plastic bag. Inside was the original broken blue shoelace. I found it in the tote from the hospital, she said. I didn't know if you wanted to keep it. I held it for a moment, then I handed it to Ivy. What should we do with it? I asked. She thought seriously. Can we tie it on the porch plant? So we did. The lace was too short to make a bow, so Ivy looped it once around the pot and tucked the ends beneath the rim. It looked strange there, faded blue against dark soil, next to marigolds that leaned toward the light. I did not explain it to her. I did not need to. My mother never got the final scene she wanted. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no holiday apology, no photo where everyone stood shoulder to shoulder, pretending the damage had been confusion. She tried once 2 years later through Aunt Vicky to ask whether she could send Ivy a birthday card. I said no. Aunt Vicky did not argue. Maybe she had learned something. Maybe she was just tired. Either way, I appreciated the quiet. My father sent a check for Ivy that same year. No note. I returned it through Valerie's office. Brooke eventually moved in with a roommate across town. I heard that from someone else and felt relief so faint it barely had a shape. As for me, I kept the house. For a while, I thought I would have to sell it because every room had been touched by the fear of what my parents tried to do. But then Ivy learned to ride her bike in the driveway. Teresa planted basil by the back steps. I painted my office a soft green and replaced the broken drawer pull with one Owen would have hated because it was too fancy. The house became ours again, not because nothing bad had happened there, but because the people who came in afterward were invited. There are still papers in a folder. There are still names on forms. Valerie still gets holiday cards from Ivy, who addresses them to Mems. Cho, who had the important folder. Valerie sends back postcards from wherever her work takes her, always with one sentence about the weather and one question about school. The first time Ivy called Teresa from the school office because she had a stomachache, Teresa answered on the second ring. I was in a meeting and saw the missed call 3 minutes later. Before panic could finish its old route through my body, a text came in. Got her. She's okay. Soup at my house. Call when free. I sat at the conference table staring at those words while my coworkers discussed debit card skimmers. Got her. She's okay. Call when free, not call now, not explain yourself, not how could you miss this. Just a child cared for and a mother allowed to breathe. That was what my family never understood. They thought control was the same as care because both let them stand close. But care does not need to steal the key. That is one of the few things I know well enough to say plainly. I still have the hospital bracelet in a small box in my closet. Not because I like remembering the ICU. I do not. I keep it with the copied school receipt from Teresa, the first fraud alert printout, and a photo of Ivy holding her blue keychain in front of the marigolds. Sometimes proof is not for court. Sometimes it is for the part of you that was trained to doubt your own memory. My name is still Lena Whitaker. Ivy is 11 now. She is tall for her age, stubborn about math, and still missing one mitten half the winter because apparently symmetry is not required for learning. She knows who is allowed to pick her up. She knows where the emergency numbers are. She knows family can be real without being automatic. When she asks about Owen, I tell her the truth I can. When she asks about my parents, I tell her less, but I do not lie. I say, they made unsafe choices, and my job is to keep you safe. She accepts that because children can live with plain truth if adults do not decorate it with guilt. The blue shoelace stayed around the marigold pot until weather finally wore it thin. One morning, I found it on the porch, frayed into 3 pieces after a storm. Ivy picked them up and asked if she should throw them away. I thought I would feel something sharp. Instead, I felt tired and grateful. "Yes," I said, "we don't need it anymore." She dropped the pieces into the trash and ran inside to find her backpack. The new blue cord is still on her key. Teresa still has the spare, and my mother, wherever she is, does not. That's my story. A broken blue shoelace, 9 days in the ICU, and a porch light left on by someone who did not need to call herself family to act like it. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to look closely at who shows up when there is nothing to gain. Protect your papers, your peace, your children, your keys, and the quiet life you built with your own 2 hands. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment, share where you're listening from, and subscribe to the Madeline Files for more stories where the truth does not shout, but it does arrive.